Do you feel there have been reactions among women of color to the designation black feminist?
Oh, definitely. I think when we began using that term, I mean, this is a relatively new term in the early 70s, just as feminist as a term was really not used very much until the second wave, that it was extremely shocking, and I think that was part of its value. Part of its value was to indicate not that we were women only, but that we had certain political stances. Now, it may very well be that the term may need to change, but for a very long time, it put us in a debate, not only with white women, who I don't want to be focused on only, but in terms of women in the world, and also in terms of men within our own communities. I guess part of my sense of what needs to happen, and I know we'll be getting to that as well, is that in order for our communities to be strong, we need to recuperate some sense of what it means to be in those communities as women and men. And to some extent, those definitions were very much weakened from my readings in the 1960s, when there was a tremendous emphasis on manhood in black movements. I was certainly a part of them. And that part of what needed to happen, and we see writers like Audre Lorde and Toni Morrison and Alice Walker and so on being published right after that period, was to react and say that race, very often when we were talking about the term race in the 1960s, we all thought it meant women and men. And what we discovered, to a large extent within the movements, was that it meant maleness. In order to deal with that, we needed to come up with some kind of a critique, because we knew that would destroy our communities as much as racism, that they are related. It is one of the ways in which racism operates, is through sexist terms. So that I saw, for example, in the 1960s, and I lived through this period, where black women were told to walk 4 or 5 steps behind black men, right? We know this from the Karenga movement. I saw it myself. I saw the way in which black women were supposed to imitate, without black men knowing they were really doing this, white women in becoming quote-unquote black Madonnas who were quiet. I remember Baraka issuing a statement in which there was 10 commandments for the black woman, and the first one was that in the presence of a black man she should not speak. So that there is that intent in the term black feminism to indicate also within our communities that we will not become like white women in terms of the way white women have been or have been seen to be. In their attempt to get out of that, very often within our own movements, we are told we should be like them. So that's a very important point. Another also, too, I think that I want to stress again, is that I think it's important for us to think about the international construct, and that in many ways, black women, African American women, Caribbean women, I'm from the Caribbean, have been very much at the center of being concerned about women moving all over the world. Coming from the Caribbean, where race is constructed somewhat differently from the way it is in this country, I know that we have had influences, the construct of an African Caribbean woman, on the way in which many other groups, and I do not mean just white people, they are after all a minority in the world, but other groups have been thinking about the way in which to define womanhood. So for me, it is the process that we're involved in now in looking at a traditional construct of African womanhood from which we come, along with a new world construct of womanhood, what Toni Morrison calls the new world, African American. That we need to fuse African American woman. We need to fuse those in our movement into the 21st century. And we need to move towards new definitions of womanhood that are based in our tradition and are very much involved with the world as it now is.